Welcome to the Catholic Cafe, where Catholic truth is served fresh daily. We've made you a reservation in the luxurious corner booth, so come on in and see what's on the menu today. Now, here's your host, Deacon Jeff Drzymski.
Greetings and welcome to the Catholic Cafe. I'm Deacon Jeff, sitting in the luxurious corner booth of the Catholic Cafe, joined as always by Ziggy Rodriguez.
That's me.
I'm so glad you're here. And of course, we don't have Tom today.
Right.
Another hair appointment. Tom has got the his hair. We have a guest here.
Yes.
Brother Dylan Perry, and he's a De La Salle Christian Brother. A De La Salle Christian Brother.
That's
I have to say it right. So used to saying he's a Christian Brother because we have a Christian Brothers High School and a Christian Brothers University in our hometown, and so I'm used to just calling it Christian Brothers, but a De La Salle Christian Brother. I want to say it right because that's an order. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, it's awesome. We are going to do like a series of 3 shows. And we're going to talk a little bit about Brother Dylan's his story, his vocation story, how he ended up being a La Sallian brother, and that's awesome. But he's sitting in Tom Dorian's place, and Tom, the thing is, what you don't know, Brother Dylan, is Tom has got perfect hair. I mean, literally. And I think if there was like another chapter of the book of Revelation, it might have been about Tom's hair. I don't want to get heretical and start, writing scripture or anything, but it's pretty scriptural. It's pretty nice, his hair, and so we think there's a cause for sainthood for his hair, but
nice.
So we call him Venerable Tom. But Tom's not with us today so that you could be with us.
Oh,
Yes.
well, I appreciate him making the space for
Yeah,
me.
well, he does his hair like when he's not here. I'm going to get you to lean forward more
right.
into your mic. 'cause
He's
people aren't
literally
here.
either on the show or getting his hair done. It's one of the two.
He's got his priorities. Anyway, we miss Tom. We look forward to seeing him back. But we're so excited that we have Brother Dylan Perry here. And so we're going to talk, I guess, in general. I mean, well, just to introduce you, you're in the Midwest district of De La Salle Christian Brothers. Not that everyone knows what that is, but it's like a province or an area.
Exactly.
It's like everything else, religious orders are divided into
That's right.
Regions.
We are an international order of brothers in 80 countries around the world, and so we separate into provinces or districts. I think
Right.
there's about 60 around the world, and so the U.S. is separated into 3, and so the Midwest is one of them.
And you're there.
That's right.
That's your place, and that's awesome that you're there. I'm glad you came to visit us here. What province are we in?
We are also in the Midwest.
Okay.
So I'm originally from Memphis, where we are now.
Oh, awesome.
That's how we got to be. So it was the St. Louis district combined with the Chicago and Minnesota districts that...
Yes, that's inside
together.
baseball.
That's right.
That is LaSallian baseball right there. And we just lost 6 listeners. They were listening and they just tuned out. So we don't want to talk like that anymore because we want to keep as many people listening as possible.
Not too much history.
I don't know. There's some fascinating history, and I think we're going to spend our second episode with you and talk a little bit about that history, and because I don't know that we've had a Christian brother on our program before.
I can't recall.
No, and so this is going to be exciting. We can talk a little bit about that, but I wanted to start because also I will tell people we're going to do a third episode really about what you're doing right now. You're a school principal on the Blackfeet Reservation, which is in northwest Montana.
That's right.
And when I heard that, I thought, like, I've got some questions.
Yeah.
That's really I love the LaSallian brothers. I love the Christian brothers and their charism, and I've always been interested in them. But like where they end up and what they're doing, and then like how that impacts like whatever the local community. And so we'll talk about that. We'll spend a whole show on that. So I'm sure you're going to have some great stories about the Blackfeet Reservation. So that's a little teaser. Tune in 2 episodes. You're going to want to hear that. But let's start first with you when you're a Memphis boy.
That's right.
Were you born and raised in Memphis?
I was, yeah. I think, right down the street, St. Francis Hospital.
Oh, wow. That's not far from here.
So, I grew up in Memphis and I've lived all of my life up until 22 there, and haven't lived here since.
Now, would that make St. Francis Hospital, would that be like technically a second-class relic?
I think so.
Yeah, because
I think once
I'm sure they kept all that, whatever,
That's right.
wherever you were, it's like, this is Brother Dylan.
This is the Brother Dylan biohazard storage.
That's right. So I'm sure everyone. This recording is going to go in that cause for canonization.
Yeah. So we should be careful with what we say. Exactly right, because that could be problematic. I hope we don't hold up your cause. Actually, your life is actually holding up your cause. So, we don't want you to go anywhere anytime soon. So I take it. Well, now, were you born Catholic?
I was, so just myself, my twin brother in the family. My parents also grew up Catholic. Went to Memphis Catholic High School.
Yeah,
the whole 9 yards. And I think that's I think we're just beginning to talk about a vocation story. That's a great foundation. Having supportive and involved parents for me was a huge part. Although not. I didn't feel that they were super religious when I was growing up, but we were involved in our parish life. My dad was usher. And
what parish?
Incarnation.
Okay.
Eventually, we moved out to Collierville when I was 5. So sure if we wanted to get.
No, I just curious.
Yeah, we hit a bunch of other parishes too. In the.
Well, you were roaming Catholics like
right.
everybody else. You spent a little time kind of checking out the other parishes.
Well, I think when we were young, finding the part of town that worked for our growing family.
There you go.
Moving around, and we were down in Mississippi for a few years. As well in Tupelo, so we hit all the Elvis boxes.
Oh, there you go! Awesome.
His birthplace and his home, but grew up Catholic, and that was a big part of our lives, a big part of our identity.
Now, you kind of mentioned that you were Catholic and that you weren't like super uber Catholic, or you kind of.
I don't think. What I mean is that it didn't seem to me in early life that was like. It was just part of who we were.
Right.
Now my mom's family, Polish Catholic from Chicago, so you had that real cultural piece to it from her side. And my grandfather was really involved in his parish. They grew up in Fraser, and so he still, until his death a few years ago, involved in Our Lady of Sorrows. And,
awesome.
And all that. So historically, we were a big part of Catholic schools and parishes.
I know this may shock some people, but like cultural Catholicism, like the culture of Catholicism in a family has always been traditionally very important, right? And a lot of times we've taken it for granted, and I think modern families don't necessarily share those cultural aspects as much, and that's problematic because that affects, right, what your kids are going to grow up and be and do and what they feel close to or called.
Definitely. And I think what I mean when I say we weren't super Catholic is that it just seemed like it was part of our lives.
You were every day you were living your faith, and as a kid you probably wouldn't have known that you were living your faith.
Exactly.
Right? You wouldn't have maybe chosen yourself as an example of like, here's a good Catholic kid right
That's
here.
right, because we weren't necessarily explicitly. We're sitting around praying the rosary together as a family, but we had meals together. We prayed at meals and those kinds
Bless
of things.
Bless us, O Lord, indeed, I guess.
We knew all of it, even though I think they might, I still had to. That's what's interesting too is then I think my parents growing up out of Vatican II. Once I started going to Catholic school in high school, I ended up doing more catechizing of my parents in some ways because they grew up in that era where we didn't quite know how to teach religion, and so they had grade school experience, high school experience, but so they knew how to live their faith, but they didn't know how to talk about their faith as much.
100%. I mean, in what you're saying is you are not unique in that way, because I mean, as you're saying this, I'm sitting there in my mind thinking, man, this sounds like me when I was growing up. Same thing, and we didn't we never missed Mass because we went to Mass. It's just what we did. Right. But I don't know that we would have been able to tell you why we didn't miss Mass other than, well, this is a holy day of obligation. And so we have to go. Okay. All right. So we went. And when we were little kids, I don't know if did you push back at all of any of that? Did you go like, I don't, why do we have to go to mass, you know?
No, I don't remember pushing back too much.
Yeah, you're better than me already. I can see that now.
Well, I think there was a nice part about growing up at the time. Now, this parish is one of the biggest in this diocese, but at the time, small Incarnation was a small, very family oriented. So we just knew people, and my brother and I were the only altar servers for noon mass. So if we didn't go, we were
the priest was all by himself, didn't know what to do.
That's right, and that also helped. I was really got along really well was very close to the priest at our parish growing up, William Cantner. Of happy memory. So he actually was a big, I think, part of my longer term vocation story. We ran into him when he was working at St. James, and I needed a part-time job when I was in college. And he said, "Oh, you come work for us. We need some maintenance stuff done and things." I ended up working there for 2 years, and having basically in downtime having great philosophical conversation with a priest who had considered being a monk, who had this rich inner life.
Either he's some kind of sly dude, right, or there was something divine in that choice at that time to be called there and to do some maintenance work and hang out with Father Cantor.
Definitely, I think a little of both. I think he knew. He had told me, or asked when I was young, "Oh, you ever thought about being a priest? You ever?" And so it's planting those seeds of vocation, and just as I would say to the audience, to everyone. Invitation is the most important part of vocation. Talking about and having people consider meaning for their life, for any vocation.
Right.
We consider why and how we're called to marriage or to single life or religious vocations. And so then I think the two things with my relationship with Father Cantner was that invitation, that like feeling seen, having those meaningful conversations, and normalizing religious vocation. Even the conversation that we're having, folks talking about religious activity, but then also seeing brothers and deacons and priests as normal people.
Right.
We're not special. I think we just are doing something in a different way, doing a different thing, and we're all called to the same kind of greatness. The same. It's just our baptismal call.
So when you were young, did you feel like any kind of draw or inkling that maybe God had some kind of plan for you that was in like the churchy world?
In retrospect, these things always seem much clearer.
Right.
Our founder, St. John Baptist de La Salle, has this idea of seeing things through the eyes of faith.
Right.
And so yes, there's clarity in retrospect with some of these things, but a lot of also how opportunities present themselves that I notice. So at the time I wouldn't think it, but the fact that we went to a religious bookstore and I just asked to get a copy of the Liturgy of the Hours is like and that's a monastic prayer, and that's part of my life daily now. And why at like 10 years old did I want that book?
Maybe you were just weird.
Exactly.
It's possible.
So there were attractions of the heart before there was a burning within the heart.
I think so. I think in a lot of my life, it's like a lot of small steps towards things, which is sometimes when people ask, "Tell me your vocation story." It's not like Paul falling off the donkey,
and that's a good one.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good one. Right. And so it's exciting, right? Lightning and bright lights and meeting Jesus on the road,
Right.
These are all good things, but so often what you're describing is this sort of like baby steps towards something.
That's right.
And a draw or a feeling that seems to increase over a period of time.
And that's what attracted me to the specific order. That's the story of our order. Is De South said, one thing led to another so imperceptibly that had I known where it would lead in the beginning, I would have never started.
Interesting.
That God leads us if we open ourselves to it. The Spirit takes us in remarkable places, but if we, how easy we can close ourselves off or try to plan for ourselves, I think in ways that close us off to those movements. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of little things that I've noticed. If I think about it in the past, connection to devotion, different devotions. I've always been very interested in the Rosary.
Now, you mentioned Father Cantner as playing sort of a key role here because he actually asked or said, "Did you ever think about?" Were there any other people in your life that might have done that early on, or you mentioned your parents being good parents and just going to Mass and doing the things that good Catholics did, right? Typical Catholics. Where were they in all of this?
Sure. I think my parents, like I said, presenting opportunities, and not in like explicit ways. And maybe that's what's so great about, at least in how I feel about my vocational journey, is they were able to not even guide. They weren't pushing, but to leave the space open for feeling these different ways or having these conversations, taking me to, like I said, to the religious bookstore. It was probably stuff that we were just going to do anyway, but not saying, "Hey, I think you should do this," or "This is," in a way.
Or
that
I really want grandkids from you, or anything like that. Yeah.
But in ways that if parents say, even this is what I want for your life, they can kind of squeeze in a bit. So I think that them being just really open about where our lives were, both my brother and my lives were going, and being just caring that we were doing, and I think I also just saw them caring about people, and that for me is the big thing for religious life. Is just an extreme way to be able to express care, to love in a unique way.
So many people have forgotten the spiritual and corporal works of mercy, right? And so many people don't realize that is the lived experience of our faith.
Right.
And that's going to generate more faith amongst the people that you're actually caring for.
And that's, for me, what's so exciting about and life-giving about living religious vows is how it multiplies love. How I get to go, we'll talk later about, I get to go out to the middle of nowhere and be a new and different witness to God's love, to that incarnational love that we're celebrating right now.
Awesome.
At Christmas. And and I think that's who we're all called to be. And
so at what point in time, though, did you start to really, something said like, you know what, I really feel like I'm being called in this direction.
That fire really started burning.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Where you could define it in a way to say, like, I think I'm called to be.
Yeah. So there's a few, little things where people said, "Oh, well, you seem like you're really religious," and I hadn't thought that was important to me. I was very academically interested in theology, and I think that was a searching in my during high school and college. So I was really blessed to be in the presence of so many brothers that were around in the schools and teaching me to be able to get that presence and that witness. And then after college, I participated in our volunteer program that I ended up running later. So LaSallian Volunteers, I went to Philadelphia. I lived in community with brothers while working. That made it seem possible. That made it seem like something like I could wrap my head around. But then I went to University of Arkansas for my master's, and I was away from it, and I had to do religious practice on my own. And I think that's when I started to realize how important it was to me, how much I missed having a community around to support my religious practice. And so in some ways that like being away from it in a way that I had to make it my own.
You did have the living witness of you're an alum of Christian Brothers High School. So you
That's
had
right.
these brothers that were sort of like, whether they knew it or not, and I think they did, but models of they're modeling for you a way of life that maybe drew you in there. And I guess I'm just mentioning that because parents, it makes a difference where your kids go to high school.
It does.
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's just interesting when you make the choices.
And even certainly that consistent experience, it makes a difference who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
How who you spend time with, and so for parents who you encourage your students or your children to spend time with. And letting them be open to making their own choices and their own mistakes, because it was in me, not a mistake, but then going and being away from it made it more important for me. And I think that's when I started caring a lot more about my faith, and then it was once I got a job actually working for the brothers at our national office, and it was only a few months before I joined the Discernment program. And
now imagine when you did join that discernment program, nobody went like, we are totally shocked, dude. What is going on? This came out of left field because really you were already kind of living the experience.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things, I think, in a lot of cases where people can see you better than you can see yourself. And so having those conversations and being with people who can reflect you to you well is, I think, really important. For any kind of discernment, having people that can tell you truths about yourself and that see you.
One question I have, you're obviously, for those who are in Radio Land, they don't see it. Brother Dylan's a handsome guy. He's stylish. He's got a great beard. He's got a great sense of humor.
He looks like a church nerd, though, I'm going to be honest with you.
He's got a church nerd vibe, but that's in right now.
You just like him because he's got a great beard like you do.
I do. I have great respect for his beard. But the reason I say all this is, if you had decided to pursue a vocation to marriage, it's not like you would have had a hard time, finding. I'm sure there were plenty of women women in your life who had expressed interest along the way, right?
True.
And so, how do you navigate that as you're hearing, from God and you're hearing from the church, a call to look at religious life, and then you've got potentially, beautiful women who'd like you to, consider an alternative.
All right, let's not go crazy, okay? All right, he's not a calendar guy, It's like he's like Mr. June,
So, some of these people might be listening to the show, so I don't want to.
Very smart.
But you're right. It's an interesting thing. I think of it the same way as I think about any vocation. So just like marriage, when you make a decision towards religious life, you're making a commitment, and just like committing to a person, you're sort of closing other doors for the sake of a greater openness to what you're choosing. And for me, there's so much joy in being able to spread and to share my love in the ways that I do. I noticed, and it may feel a little seem a little supernatural or something, but I because I'm a part of an order that's dedicated to working with children, especially marginalized children. I feel connected to young people in a way that I feel like I feel people open up to me because of my state in life. That they can tell my, that I don't have other priorities or other, ulterior motives in a relationship. So I wouldn't trade that there's sort of an openness and an honesty to the way that I'm able to relate to people. That is.
It's nice when
really
there's not a
nice.
veil that you have to maintain right? That there's not like this hidden guy we don't know. You're just
Right.
able just to kind of be you to other people, and that really does help.
It does.
Imagine living life a little more simply, I guess.
And so when I notice having those kinds of meaningful relationships, it notice how you are connecting with people, and that that helps me to not lament the ways that are more traditional, that I'm not connecting with people.
So in this, like, you've made this vocational choice. Now, did your parents receive that well?
Yes. It's a journey for everyone.
Sure.
I think coming to or sort of understanding.
Right.
I think there's a lot of worry initially because
That's a parent's job.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a parent's job.
Did my mom call you before?
No. I've got 9 kids, and so it's our job to worry
Definitely.
about our kids and if they've made the right choices and what are they doing every day of their life. Is this good or bad for them?
Exactly.
Right?
And I think those are all helpful and like healthy parts of the discernment process, is being able to talk about those things. And so, yeah, they were initially very supportive, as always. But geez, once my brother and I both made the decision to be educators, they already knew that we weren't going to make a lot of money. So there's a number of things that, vow of poverty is no big deal. I was already going to be poor as an educator and working in nonprofits and stuff, the path that I had.
Well, that is awesome.
So.
We're actually coming to the end of this particular episode. We're going to continue this conversation in our next episode with you, talking a little more about your vocational call, but really why the Christian Brothers, and we'll do that. I just want to highlight a couple things that you mentioned that stuck out to me. One is this idea of an invitation to vocation. So people are wondering, like, how do we get more vocations to anything? Well, that invitation is important. And certainly you talked about the openness to a vocational call and how important it is to be open to that. And then also who you surround yourself with, how important that is. And all the things that went into where you are today. These are things that as people are thinking, like, what about vocations in the world and what do we need to add? These are all things that are important to do it. Brother Dylan Perry, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you in our next episode to continue this conversation. In the meantime, let's ask our Blessed Mother to intercede on our behalf. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Catholic Cafe. If you'd like to contact Deacon Jeff, send him an email at deaconjeff@thecatholiccafe.com. Visit us on the web at thecatholiccafe.com. You can also find us on iTunes or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The Catholic Cafe is brought to you by the Order of Malta Federal Association. Join us again at the Catholic Cafe, serving up salvation one cup of coffee at a time.